There's been a lot of research over recent years exploring prosocial behaviours, behaviours that seek to benefit others. Two behaviours of particular interest are compassion and kindness. The words compassion and kindness are often used interchangeably, as if they refer to the same thing. But as we start to better define these terms and the constructs which they're describing, it becomes clear that while overlapping, they really are quite different. Both very good, but different. Hi, my name's Dr. Stan Steindl, and I thought it might be interesting to explore compassion and kindness and how to tell the difference. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome to Compassion in a T-shirt. And if you find this interesting, please subscribe. The first thing I did to explore compassion versus kindness was to reflect on the roots of the words. The word compassion is known to come from the Latin root, which means to suffer with. The word kindness is thought to come from the Old English word kin, treating others like kin. So then I went to the Oxford English Dictionary, but not any OED, the first edition, published in 1913. I later checked the most recent edition, and the definitions had remained the same. Compassion. The feeling or emotion when a person is moved by the suffering or distress of another, and by the desire to relieve it. Pity, that inclines one to spare or to succour. So again, suffering is an important part of the definition of compassion. In fact, this OED definition is pretty close to the definition of compassion that we use in compassion-focused therapy. Compassion is the sensitivity to suffering in self and others with a commitment to try to alleviate and prevent it. Kindness. The quality or habit of being kind nature or disposition, or the exhibition of this in action or conduct. So what is kind? Having or showing a benevolent, friendly or warm-hearted nature or disposition, ready to assist or show consideration for others, sympathetic, obliging, considerate. So, compassion and kindness are very close. One difference that is emerging, though, is that compassion involves a response to suffering, whereas kindness perhaps doesn't have to. So, the next thing I did was turned to the Buddhist perspective. The Dalai Lama wrote in his 2001 book, An Open Heart, just as compassion is the wish that all sentient beings be free from suffering, loving kindness is the wish that all may enjoy happiness. Here we see a similar distinction. Compassion is specifically a response to suffering, whereas kindness isn't. I've included a link to the Dalai Lama's book in the description below. In 2019, a paper by Gilbert, Basran, MacArthur and Kirby, published in the journal Mindfulness, sought to explore differences in the semantics of the words compassion and kindness. A link to this paper is also in the description. They had a very interesting methodology in which they asked 222 UK university students and 112 Australian members of the general community to judge a number of scenarios as either compassion or kindness, and then rate the emotions they might feel about each of these scenarios. The results were fascinating. There was a striking consistency as to whether participants judged scenarios as examples of compassion or kindness. Trying to console someone who was in distress was judged as compassion by nearly 80% of the total sample. Baking cakes for colleagues at work was judged as kindness by over 97% of the sample. However, just as interesting were the scenarios that were more difficult to tell apart. In the student sample, listening to a colleague at work you don't like because they are struggling with work stress was judged 50-50 compassion or kindness. In the general public, helping someone whose car is broken down, knowing that you will get dirty in the helping, was also close to 50-50 compassion and kindness. So people do seem to distinguish compassion from kindness. But the study found that the key to the distinction was the degree of suffering being present. Greater suffering was associated more with compassion than kindness. Also, the study found that compassion was more likely to be textured with feelings such as sadness, anxiety, anger, or disgust, while kindness was more likely to be textured with joy. Okay, so compassion and kindness are defined differently, and people do seem to be able to distinguish them as different concepts. But there is a little comment in the Gilbert et al. Paper that says compassion may often involve kindness, but kindness does not need to include suffering or compassion. Perhaps trying to console someone in distress is compassion, but also involves kindness as well. So, in a collaboration between the University of Queensland and University of Coimbra, we looked further into this by asking 327 Australians, 150 Singaporeans, and 173 Portuguese to select from a list of 30 related words the 3 words that they felt most relate to compassion. And the most selected word that relates to compassion across all 3 cultural groups? Kindness. So I hope that clarifies things. Compassion and kindness are distinct terms. Compassion seems to have specificity around responding to suffering. Kindness can be part of a compassionate response, but can occur in situations that don't involve responding to suffering, and therefore don't involve compassion. I would love to hear your thoughts, and I have 3 questions for you. 1. Can you think of scenarios involving both compassion and kindness? 2. Can you think of scenarios that involve kindness but not necessarily compassion? And 3. Can you think of any scenarios that involve compassion but do not involve kindness? I'd be particularly interested to hear your thoughts on question 3. Just jot them down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video. It was very kind of you, and may kindness be a frequent destination on your compassionate journey.